Hey, how's it going? I'm Sam Mortensen, and today I'm going to be giving a 4 month update of my indie game. So, just a quick overview before I jump into the actual gameplay. I have been working on a SRPG or strategic RPG or TRPG, and basically these are games where you play in turn with your allies and then you fight against some enemy, and I've always loved them. You know, I'm a big Final Fantasy Tactics fan, Disgaea fan, Advance Wars fan back in the day. I like that you get to take your time. You don't feel pressured to attack. There's no like pressure to make a quick move or a quick decision. You can be strategic, although the strategy falls apart in a lot of these games. And they work really well on handheld. And so I wanted to make a game kind of in the same visual style as Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, which is not very popular, but I liked it, and see if I can do this, if I can make this sort of game. Um, yep. So some background on it. This game is called Turnkey, although there's basically no story set in stone right now. It's just me building out an engine to support the sort of gameplay I want to see, and practicing things like art and music as I go along. Uh, yeah, I'm trying to see what else I should say. I'll probably just jump into it, but yeah, the reason I'm making this video is that it's been about 4 months, and I wanted to check in kind of with myself and see where I'm at, all the gameplays or engine features that have gotten done, and think about what's next. Yeah, so that's about it. So I hope if you're an indie developer or you're thinking about doing it, this is useful. Okay, so we'll jump in. So this is the game. I'm going to make it full screen, but the native resolution is really small. I should know it by heart, but it's something like 320 by 180. So I'll blow it up, but it may look like way uglier blown up. So here's the game. You can see me right in the middle. This is a character that I'm calling Leaf, but it doesn't really matter. He's just some old man with a Lorax style mustache. And yeah, that's it. So this mode we're in right now, I just call it like free roaming mode or free mode or the default mode. Basically, you move around with arrow keys. The game supports elevations. You can have tiles that are a bit raised. The rendering works, so if you're behind a raised tile, you can kind of see that tile shadow and part of your body. You can see here there's multiple levels. The outlines are done dynamically, and so this saves a lot of pixel time, especially if I want to start adding other objects. But you can see it's already not perfect. There's some clipping here, and this may be the engine or maybe me, but there's some problems with aligning the tiles. But overall, it's very cheap and works well. So this is free roaming mode. This would be the mode where, just like in most SRPGs, most of the story interaction happens. So stuff like getting quests, if there are going to be quests, buying and selling things, most of your adventuring is going to be in this mode. I'm trying to think if there's other features in it. There's also dialogue. If I talk to this person, I have a dialogue system set up where basically you can give people scripts, and scripts include multiple dialogue trees. It's not that complex like something like Skyrim, I'm sure is a lot deeper, but you get this dialogue, and this is the default one, and you can page through it. These character portraits are just random snapshots as you start the conversation of your sprite, but these would be actual character portraits in the real game. Yeah, that's about it. You can see there's kind of a funny back and forth. So there's a possibility of dialogue, but obviously it hasn't been fleshed out. And you can see all the graphics are placeholder. The text has no background. There's a lot of things I would change, but I just wanted to see how hard it is, and it's okay. So roam mode, or this mode, is very different from the normal game. It's like quite simple, and you can't do a lot. But this is where you would be adventuring and walking around and doing your thing. If you hold down A, you can see in the top left that key is lighting up. So this is like the turn key. I get that it's quite literal, but once the turn key is active, you move into turn-based mode. And so in turn-based mode, there's a heck of a lot of stuff going on. Next to the lit up key, you can see AP, so those are action points. That means I can take 2 actions a turn. You see HP, I'm super buffed because it's a demo, but I have 1000 HP. And you can see that I have a bunch of actions. There's move, which costs 1 AP. When I hover over it, you can see the tiles that you can move. You have a cursor you can move around anywhere on the map right now. But if you select a tile, you'll move there. You can go back to cancel out of that mode. Actions that aren't possible are grayed out, so I know I can't attack because there's no one in range. There's a concept of spells, which I don't even know will be in the final game, but it was just interesting to think about things that aren't a normal attack. There are items, and you can see in this list it's quite long, so in the bottom right-hand corner, oh geez, you actually can't see that. Can I move my little head? In the bottom right-hand corner, there's an arrow. So it indicates that I can move down. So it supports super long lists, and when you reach the bottom of the list, you pop back at the top. I know this seems like standard functionality, but this is very from scratch, so all of this is by hand. And then you can end your turn at any time, and you can go back into roam mode. You can't do this at any time, but if you're safe, like basically if no one has taken a turn in a whole cycle or whatever you want to call it, you can go back to roam mode. So we'll activate the turnkey again, and we'll move to this bad guy. And you can see that attack is lit up because he's on that square. So what's cool about this is you notice he's kind of offset from the actual tile. That's because there is no like strict, like this is turn-based mode, this is roam mode for these enemies. It just kind of freezes time where it is when I activate the turnkey. Maybe I could pop them into place so it's a bit easier to see what tile this guy's on, but it's okay. So we'll attack. You can see their health went down. Everyone has health points. And that's used all my AP, so you can see that move is even grayed out, even though I could see what I could do, but I'll just end my turn. Now James will take a turn, Shelly takes a turn, and it all happened a little fast, but you can see my health points went down by 1 because I forget who I just said, James attacked me or Shelly attacked me. So this is cool. You can also see that they're kind of ganging up on me. This character, this fire person, knew that their friend was in a fight and knew to move towards me. They'll reposition each other to continue attacking me. So James is going to keep approaching me. I can run away, and James will follow me. He'll follow me around obstacles. Seems simple, but there are some game dev things to note. It's using the A-star algorithm, so it's using real pathfinding. They can get around obstacles. They take the optimal path. They can't move around each other, or they can't move through each other, so they do that. And they also know how to surround you. So if there was like 4 enemies, they wouldn't all line up to attack. They would choose a tile around me and then go towards that. That isn't perfect still. It turns out it's quite hard when you have a mob of enemies to make sure they take turns and stack in the right order, but it's pretty good. You'll also notice when I attacked this character, they flipped over. I have no death sprite right now, so that's why it kind of looks like that. So I'm going to go back and finish this fight. There's other game dev things I'm forgetting to mention, but one thing is that, you know, my character will turn towards the thing he's attacking, and also as you move around, there's 4 positions. You know, he can face bottom left, bottom right, top left, top right, or however you want to say it. Seems simple, but those algorithms in an isometric world are hard to deal with. So I've ended my turn, and all the enemies that were engaged with me are done or dead, so I can go back to roam mode and walk around. So this is cool, and this is kind of like the core gameplay mechanic I'm working on, is how can you make a game that's balanced and fun, that's like really open world. So like this is using an infinite tile map, which I'll show later, and you can go anywhere you want or do anything. And you can engage this turnkey mode at any time. So you have to think about how do you set up fights in a way that's balanced in the same way a normal SRPG would be. And I don't know yet, so I'm still working on it. But this is like the core gameplay mechanic, is you go back and forth between roaming around and doing these turn-based fights, and hopefully explore a big world. So that's about everything. I didn't use an item, but there are a concept of items that do things. So I can use a potion. It healed some amount of health, probably 10. And those also use action points. So I had to end my turn because I hadn't done anything yet. Game needs to make sure that my last action didn't trigger anyone else. And then I'll roam. I feel like that's most of what there's to talk about. You know, there's subtle things that I didn't mention, like you can see a camera follows you and the camera is somewhat smooth. What else is going on? There's a few things. Oh yeah, with the enemy pathfinding, they also have a concept of visibility. So for example, this character or this enemy is on its own platform. And because I wasn't visible, or I actually probably was visible, but they couldn't traverse to me, they didn't take a turn. Because otherwise you would be stuck in turns with enemies that can never reach you, and that would be kind of like a soft lock on the game. So that's important. Enemies, like I said before, do have the concept of visibility too. This is a bad example because they can see each other, but hypothetically, if there was a wall between these two and I attack this enemy would not attack me. This is just more of the default game map. You can see I've played with elevation layers and maybe more complex tile positions. Yeah, that's just about it for the game. I know it's not much after 4 months, but this took a lot of work and was very complicated. So now I'm going to go through what tools I used to actually build it. So we're going to exit out of it. Kind of the exciting thing is over. So if you want to stop watching, you can. But now we get to talk about tools. All right. So now we're going to talk about tools. This game is actually made in Golang. It's a language made by Google, I think, to run their backend services. And I'm not going to do it justice, but it's basically a very readable language that focuses on concurrency and type safety. And it's very simple. Obviously, people make incredibly complex systems with it, usually web servers or web services, but actually writing the language is very simple. What's nice about this for a game engine is that there's less ambiguity into what things do. You know, you can't have a variable that's unused, for instance. You can't just cast like an integer to a float without thinking about how you're doing that typecast. You have to actively think about everything you do with Golang, and that's great. In terms of readability, the double-edged sword here is that there are no really utility functions for things like reverse an array or sort an array with this default sort or convert a map into an array or vice versa. You have to write all these yourself, and there's only one kind of loop, kind of. There's just 4 loops. So you have to kind of write very verbose code, which is annoying compared to these utility-first languages like Python. But what you end up with is code that is very verbose, but very readable and hopefully maintainable. I'm the only one maintaining it, but that's it. So it's written with Go. I don't really want to go through the code base because it's closed source, so it's not like you can actually view it yourself afterwards. And I don't know, it's not very exciting, but I'll go through the actual tools I use to make it. So we can look at the file structure here. Basically, I have a makefile with the commands I most commonly run. I have scripts that are run by that, and then all of my files are in this package folder, which is a Golang thing. I think I'm actually supposed to call this internal or something to be idiomatic, but it doesn't really matter. It's a private code base. So here you see stuff like my fork of this library, A* for Golang, base methods, which are like methods that could be used regardless of the engine. Most of the game is in the engine code. And then we have 2 other abstracted things. One is a library I made to parse tiled tile sheets, and the other is generic ways to work with sprites, you know, having some structure to contain a sprite that could be animated, and maybe it loops, maybe it doesn't loop, etc. So let's go over to the engine I'm using for this. So I'm using something called Ebiton. It's made by a Japanese programmer named Hajime Hoshi, and it's awesome. They say it's dead simple. I would call it utility first. It basically provides the things that you probably don't want to write yourself. I know in a game engine you could say that about anything, but for me, it's graphics, audio, user input, and the main game loop. These are things that are the same in every game I work on, depending on the language. And I don't have any value in really learning OpenGL like crazy and doing this all myself. So I like using this engine. The downsides to it, I think, are that you're losing this whole community of game developers, which is my fault for choosing it. I just wanted to learn Golang, and of course I wanted to be different, like every game developer on Earth. But yeah, the downside is it's not Unity. You have no drag and drop interface. You have no support. You have no plugins. You have no standard ways to do common things. For instance, I'm making an isometric game, which is quite difficult. I also chose that for myself, but with isometric games, it's quite hard to do the projection from an orthographic game to an isometric game, and hard to do things like tile order. All of the rendering, all of the math is pretty hard, and I had to kind of do that myself. I think you get that for free in Unity. Also, I saw some stuff in Godot that already did that for you. So those are just examples of what's bad about using it. But the great thing is that it works. It's incredibly fast to compile. And Hajime Hoshi works for a game company, I can't remember, that is using this to make production games. So it's actually proven. So thank you, Hajime, for making this. This is the website. It's pretty simple. There's a lot of examples, which I've definitely copied a lot of code from. So if you're interested, you can check it out and see what you like. Yep. So that's the language. That's the engine. Golang is the language. I would say it's good to learn if you're a software engineer in general. I think a lot of things are going this way, or Rust, depending on what company you work for. So learn it. It's fun. Yep. So that's it. That's the engine, and that's the language. So there's other things. There's audio, graphics, and the actual data that powers the game. So let's jump into graphics. So I'm using ASC Sprite. I don't know how to say it right. I always say AE Sprite, even though that's not how it's spelled. Really simple. I'm not a pixel artist. I'm not very good. But I'm using a few features I like that I'll show off. One is every character is in one file. So this is the file Old Man. It's the main character right now, which is just a placeholder. You have walk animations. You have a punch animation. You have to do walk from the other side and punch from the other side. This kind of looks like a push, like a self-defense get away from me push. The cool features I'm using are tagging in AE Sprite. So I tag a few frames, and that way I can animate them on their own. It's possible in the future this could be used to output something programmatically, and I pull sprites out of the tags magically. That would be kind of a dream. I'm also linking cells. Am I? Here it is. So I'm linking cells, so I don't have to make changes multiple times for frames that are shared. I'm sure it's actually inefficient to have the same frame 3 times in one sprite sheet, but it's a lot easier as a developer. And that way I can just say, here's the sprite sheet, here's the speed to play it at. I don't have to worry about the frame order. Like you could do frame 0, 1, 0, 2, something like that. Hope that all makes sense. So anyway, I'm still learning this program. There's a lot to go through, but yeah, those are the cool things I do there. In Tiled, I have the entire game laid out in Tiled, and I'm already storing a lot of data here. I don't know what the future of how I'm going to use this is, but what would be great is if I could put as much of the game in here as possible. Just to go through it, I have a simple tile sheet that we'll go to the base map that I can use to draw different things. It looks just like the demo you just saw. You can see the whole game. And I'm using an infinite tile map, and I'm set up to properly I should have tucked this in the engine part, but I'm set up to properly render that at any size. I know that's like famous last words, but I am using things like chunking and hashing to make sure that only entities that are close to the viewport are updated. Like, when they have their AI cycle, it just happens in a small area. And also that only tiles within the viewport are rendered or pretty close to that. So I've taken things into account to have an open world sort of game. I think this will be relatively new for SRPGs. I'm sure people are already doing it because everything's been done, but to have an SRPG that feels more like Breath of the Wild than Fire Emblem is kind of an idea I had early on. So you have your tiles. There's no like metadata for these. Nothing special. I don't know how to do tiled that well. But I just recently added entities. So these are using this shape and tiled, like insert point. And if you click on one, you can see there's a few fields. They have a type. That type comes with a few defaults. So you can see it says what the allegiance is. It says the type. I'm not sure what this type is, but it doesn't matter. Probably the sprite sheet. I'm not implementing that yet, but it gives them a name. It says what type they are. And that type also determines the color of the point. Kind of matters. For Duncan here, that was the person we talked to in the demo. They also have a dialogue. So this just maps to one of the scripts I was talking about with a bunch of things to say. I'm sure this will be more complex later, but it's nice. And then you have the point where the player starts. Because it's open world, there should only be one of these, but maybe you could have multiple points for things like checkpoints or respawn points. But the point of all this is that although I'm doing a lot of things from scratch, I can still build the game visually, which is really important to my sanity. I love programming, but entering data into an array is not programming really. It's just busy work. So this is really cool. So we have all of that covered. Now let's go into how I actually use these things. So if you remember that make file, I just have three scripts. One is run. This will actually compile the code and run it, like as a binary. Pretty standard. I've also set up the game to work with Go run. If you don't know Go, this won't interest you at all, but to me, it's important to have it be really easy to use and work on. So you can totally just run Go run and do it. This is a little faster than compilation. You also have a way to make assets. So this is a crazy script that I will show the code for, but for everything in this source folder, it will actually run it through ASCII. I hate saying that, and it'll run it through tiled and output files. So let's look at that script just because this code is open source. I'll link to it, and I think it's interesting. So I'm on Linux, so not all of this will work cross-platform, but the command line for tiled and ASCII will. So basically what happens is I find all of the sprites in this assets source folder. So let me collapse some stuff. So here's all the sprites I work on, and it pipes them through ASCII sprite. It says, here's the file, and let's output a sheet based on the file name. So I can make any changes to these, and without going to like file export and ASCII sprite, I can just run make assets, and it will pop them out here as, there we go, as, oh gosh, that's not what I want. Okay, as sprite sheets. So that's pretty cool. I was doing this by hand before, and it was terrible. I hate it. I hate naming it. I hate the whole UI, so this is great. Tiled also has a command line. It's pretty simple, but luckily my use case is simple. So all I'm doing is running export map to take my source tile map and get a tilemap.json. So this is the file I parse in my game, and I just use this raw. I don't do any post-processing. I probably would if this was like a memory constrained game or something, but I just read this raw, even at runtime, which who knows in the future if I will. And this is how the whole game is rendered. With my own crazy code. So that's make assets, which is awesome. I also have a watch mode, and I'm not going to show the code for that. It's too complicated, but if I run make watch, it'll pop the game open. Okay, and then if we go back to this and we change our guy a little bit, it's a funny way to change him. We're gonna make him like, we're gonna make him angry in some frames. Great. So you can see it popped open the game. Like, it happened so fast, it's hard to notice. And you can see the eyes are blinking now. This also works for tiled. So let's say I want to do something new. We're gonna draw a happy face. Oh gosh. Great, do you see the happy face? If I save, it reopened it and there's the happy face. So while I'm not an artist, I am a programmer. So this is a really great way to have my workflow set up really well. The annoying part to me is that every time you save, it interrupts what you're doing in the program and opens this. So I went way overboard. We're gonna undo our eye changes. There it happens again, it's so annoying. So we're gonna close the watch and we're gonna add this sticky flag. So this is some like black magic stuff, but you can see the sprite in the bottom right, or the game in the bottom right. This is actually stickied, which is a Linux specific thing you can do with Windows management. But if I color in the eyes, save, it pops it open and you can see it there, but your focus remains in this case, ASC Prite. So I can click save as many times as I want and I'm not like constantly interrupted. So I'll do it here too. Select a good tile, add some terrible stuff, and then it popped it open. There was that little like flash of it being repositioned, but it's okay. This also works for the code. There's not really a meaningful change I can make to the code, but I can probably change the window name. So we'll change it to an exclamation mark. This takes a lot longer because it has to recompile. Oh wait, it's not watching this file. Oh, don't I look the fool? So what can we do? We can change our initial health because that's hard-coded. So I'm going to change my initial or my max health to be 5 more. It's not the best change, but I didn't have time. So you see it took a while because I had to recompile, but it worked. So honestly, I don't use this as much as I should, but when I'm really working on assets or really working on a hard problem in the game, this is amazing. I think ideally in the future, this would also save the game memory and then restore that. I think I need to have serialization of the game state or something like that for that to work. But that's cool. So that's watch mode, and that's all the tools I use for my game. I mentioned music earlier. I don't know. I'm not ready to share my music stuff, but I have some like hardware, synthesizers, and keyboards, and hopefully I'll make something good. But for this video, you don't get to see me playing bad music. Is that everything I wanted to show? Yeah, that's it. This is 4 months. I'm not sure if that is impressive or kind of sad that this is how far I've gotten in 4 months. But honestly, I haven't worked on it that long, and it's not that many lines of code. I was just gonna see. Yeah, so it's like 2,300, 2,400 lines of code. It doesn't mean that was easy to write or it wasn't rewritten a million times, but I would say I haven't put like an incredible amount of time into this. I work full time, can't really do everything, but I'm gonna keep working on it and have an update later. I don't know, maybe in 4 months or 6 months. It depends if I make something worth showing. But in terms of next steps, maybe I'll show my game as I talk just so it's less boring. So next steps. So there are areas where I need work. I think that my art skills aren't very good. You can see that for yourself, or maybe if you like this, let me know. I'll feel less bad about it, but the art definitely needs work. Also, there's no audio, so I need to work on audio. Probably more importantly, there's no story. I have a driving idea in my head. You know, the game's called Turnkey. You literally have a key. Maybe I'll have a turn animation in the future. But really what's driven the development is the gameplay, and right now it's kind of a functional game. It's not much, but you can attack, you can be attacked. I didn't show it, but if you died, if you got hit 1,000 times, you would die. It would say game over. There's the framework of a game here. So that's when it's time to step away and think about what this is going to be, finally. So I'm working on the story, I'm working on art, and that will drive development for a while. The engine is fine right now. I'm really happy with how it's written. I don't have any code that makes me super disappointed. I think what I'd like to see in the future is better AI. Everyone has the same AI and all the enemies are the same. So that would be great to have ranged attacks, to have enemies with different behavior, to have aggressive enemies. Right now you can run circles around these guys and they don't seem to mind. They should probably initiate an attack, Pokemon style. There's a lot of things I need to work on with the engine, but this is almost time to stop coding and start thinking about art assets and story. So hopefully in the next update, that will be what I have to show. Yep. So that's it. I know this is kind of a weird, unedited video. I'm not like a professional content creator, but if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter. I post a lot about tech, so that'll be annoying, but I post some stuff about games, so maybe you could filter by game dev-related hashtags and not get annoyed. I'm on Itch, but I don't have much there. I made a shooter that lives in your terminal, and I made a game for a game jam, but that's it. There's not much to show. But yeah, if you're interested, let me know. And if you have any questions about the engine, I don't really want to share the code, but I can talk about it and I can help you through problems. So yeah, thanks for watching, and look for the next update. Thanks.